In the video I made discussing my use of commercially available art assets for Dead Reckoning, I mentioned that you don't have to use them as is for your game. You can alter and adjust them to give a little bit more uniqueness to your project. I received a few questions about showing some of the techniques I used in a little bit more detail. So here I'm going to walk you through some of the things I did with both character sprites and environments to add a bit of a custom look. I'll also touch on repurposing assets in ways that might not immediately be apparent. I'll start out with some very simple techniques, often just a click or two, and then step it up to ones that are slightly more involved. But don't worry, I'm not an artist. Trust me, if I can do it, you can do it. You're not going to have to create any animations from scratch because frankly that still freaks me out. If you remember when you were a little kid, those paint by numbers pictures, that's exactly what we'll be doing here. Nothing more complex than that. And remember, Control Z is your friend. So let's get started. Here we've got the shock sweeper enemy exactly the way he came. He looks pretty good. But let's say you wanted to change some of his color. One of the simplest techniques is the replace color function. In just a couple of clicks, you can completely swap one color for another across the entire sprite sheet. Just select the eyedropper tool, click on the color you want to change, and select your new color. You can use the sliders, or if you have a specific color in mind, you can type in a 6-digit code in the box. And here you see all of the light grays have been swapped out for red, which looks pretty good. The one limitation of the technique is if the color you want to swap is being used for multiple things across the sprite sheet and you don't want to swap all of them. For example here, let's say you want to make his mask red, but you want to keep his blade white. A quick fix is to select the white color, go up to your pencil tool, and draw in the white blade like I'm doing here. It isn't that hard. Then select the marquee tool to highlight the blade, copy it with Ctrl C, paste it with Ctrl V, and you can replace all the red blades with white blades. Sure, it's a little tedious and you have to do it frame by frame, but as you can see here, I'm knocking out a frame in 3 or 4 seconds. So across the entire sprite sheet, you're just talking about a couple minutes of work. Obviously, there are a few animations here that are a bit more involved. So realistically, in this case, if I wanted the red mask and a white blade, I would have just left the blade the way it was and recolored the individual masks red, which I could have done very quickly as well. Replace color works well when there aren't a lot of different shades of one color, but on this next sprite sheet, you can see there are various shades of this light blue, and I'll show you what happens when you try to use replace color. I'm selecting the color I want to change with my eyedropper, the replace color box pops up, and again, let's say I wanted to change it out for red. You can see this character also has a little outline, so I replace that color as well. So far so good. But when you zoom out, you can see that some of the animations have different shades of those colors as the animation plays out. So you could individually replace color on those as well if you wanted to, but that gets tedious, especially if there are a lot more than the 5 or 6 that are here. So let me clear these out and show you a different technique. You can go to Edit, then Adjustments, and go to Hue Saturation. Turn up the saturation on the color, and now you can use the slider to adjust all of the colors to the same hue at once. Next, I'll show you how I adjusted my main character's design. I mentioned this before, but he originally came as this all-black glitch samurai. It looks really cool, but I wanted him to look a little bit more like an actual person, so I wanted to change his face. This is what I ultimately ended up with: a skin tone, gray hair, and a mask. Now this is not something I could have done with just a few clicks, but it still wasn't that hard, and I think it's a good example of what you can do very easily without a lot of art skill. Here you can see what I was talking about with replace color. If the color you're trying to replace is used across many parts of the sprite, it changes everything. If I just wanted to turn his face into a skin tone, that same black is used all over the sprite, and it changes all of it, which is not desirable. This actually looks kind of funny here. It looks like he's wearing a loincloth. So here you can watch me very quickly alter his face. It's just 15 pixels. I gave him a skin tone and a new colored eye. I made a slightly lighter skin tone down lower, since I figured there might be a bit of shadow just below his hat. I added his gray hair, and then I thought that looked a little plain, so I tried giving him a little mask. I did not have to come up with any new art. I just replaced some existing pixels with new colors, and it gave the sprite an entirely different look, and it didn't take very long at all. You saw me do it in real time. Now we just copy and paste across the sprite sheet. Each frame takes just a couple of seconds, so again, even if there are quite a few frames, you're talking about just a few minutes for an entire main character sprite sheet. Now you can see when he moves, some of the facial animations are a little different. Here he's leaning forward, so when I put this next to it, you can see the eyeball doesn't really line up. So you do have to make a few adjustments, but again, it's not hard, just paint by numbers. A couple of seconds, version 2 of his face is done. Same thing for version 3. Here on the jump animation where the hat comes down just a little bit. And there you have it. Just a few minutes, with some very simple pixel changes, you have a semi-custom protagonist. Now I plan on using these portraits that came with my asset pack for when my main character's internal monologue is playing. The portrait you see here is what came with the original Black Glitch Samurai. Now that I've changed him, I have to go in and change this as well. This is the one that honestly took the longest, because you could see on his face there's different shading and whatnot, so it took me a while to get right. But we're talking 15-20 minutes to turn this into this. For a beginner, that's not too bad. The shadowing on the mask looks okay. He's got a bit of shadow going over his eyes, but it looks like a portrait of my new main character. And here they are side by side. The Dark series from Penusbmic comes with several NPCs, but unfortunately not many of them feature walk animations. Maybe that's something I'll eventually tackle, but turning an idle sprite into a walking sprite does involve coming up with new animations. Since that was a bit much for me right now, what did I do? I repurposed the Swordmaster character, which is intended to be a player character with a massive moveset, into an NPC, because she does have walking and running animations. The only issue is she's carrying 2 swords in all of them, and as an NPC I really didn't want her carrying weapons. I needed her to be unarmed for narrative purposes. Not a big deal. We can adjust the sprite with minimal work and minimal skill. Again, I'll show you how. First, I used the eyedropper tool to select her hand skin tone and replace that 1 pixel that currently has a sword. Then I used the erase tool and erase her swords in each frame, for idle, walk, and run. It's 25 frames total, but each frame just takes a few seconds. There were a few frames, especially on the run, where the swords weren't just over the transparent background, but actually covering her jacket. We use our paint by number skill and fill in wherever the sword art is with her jacket color. I was able to do all 3 animations in less than 5 minutes, and here's what they look like now, without swords. I now have a fully functional walking and running NPC from an existing asset, again with minimal skill involved. Now let's talk a little bit about adjusting environments. I have this tile set here with some white lights on it of various shades. Let's say I really liked it, but I wanted the lights to be yellow. Doing an individual replace color would be tedious because there are about 13 different shades of white and gray to do. So we could try the hue adjustment and see what that gives us. But remember, that changes the hue across the entire tile set, which you may not want. So here's a clever trick you can use, and at first it might sound a little complex, but it's really not. Aseprite accepts scripts. You can write custom Lua code to do things you need it to do, and you can open up your scripts folder and add it right here. Now I know jack about Lua scripting, but there ain't no shame in my game. I went right to Claude and said generate me a script to take the brightest 13 shades of white on this tile set and make them corresponding shades of yellow. And it gave me a fully functional script in just a few seconds. Here's what it looks like. Once that's in your folder, you just go to scripts and run the one you want. Watch as I apply the script. The white lights start turning progressively more yellow. And here you can see that the hue of the entire tile set has not changed, but the lights have all been altered to different corresponding shades of yellow from what they originally were. Finally, we have this really cool grayscale parallax background for a cave, but I wanted something with a bit of color. So I'm going to show you how to easily turn it from this into this. The parallax background is made up of 7 different sheets that you layer one on top of the other. For each sheet, I simply use replace color to give it the color I want. In this case, different shades of blue and dark purple. But you could use any color palette you want. And so, as you can see, with not a lot of effort and virtually zero artistic ability, you can customize and recolor character sprites and environments from stock commercial assets to give your game a unique look. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.